Today we're going to be looking at Ephesoft Transact and how it can help in the insurance space, specifically around claims processing. To give you a brief overview of what Ephesoft Transact does, we start in the upper left-hand corner with capture. So this is where we receive or ingest any type of document from any type of source. Once we do that, we then pass it through our image cleanup in our OCR engine. We then classify and separate documents into their respective document types. Once that step is done, we then start to extract data from those documents. Moving down to step number 4, we have a human in the loop area. So that's where these documents and the data that we're extracting can be validated by a user. If there's no need for this validation step, we can skip that altogether. And then ultimately, we deliver the data and the documents to a downstream source or other application. You're going to see a full demo of this entire overview, and it will highlight how it can be that data provider for a hyperautomation flow. When it comes to insurance, it's a very document-intensive process. A lot of documents being passed back and forth, possibly a lot of handwritten documents. Ultimately, it takes quite a bit of time to process claims, and any type of savings in that area is a win for the insurance company, it's a win for the adjusters, and it's a win for the customer. This brief snapshot shows how some of our customers are saving a lot of time and money by implementing Ephesoft Transact to process their claims. The key takeaway here is that we're really reducing not just costs, but really time. You can see in that top bullet point on the right-hand side that we decreased the claims processing timeline by about 87%, dropping it from 75 days all the way down to 8 days. That's a significant savings. Here we have the lay of the land of an insurance customer. So I recommend that you pause this video here just so you can read this. I'm not going to go over every bullet point, but ultimately we have our current state on the left, how it's being done today, and on the right-hand side they have the future state, which will include all of the benefits they're going to receive from implementing Ephesoft Transact. Let's go ahead now and jump into the software so we can take a look. All right, so I'm going to show you two different scenarios. The first one is going to be an auto insurance claim. So let me show you the documents that I need to get over to the adjuster. So the first one here, this is just a driver's license scan. Our second document is a proof of loss document, all handwritten. And our last one is the accident report. So these are the three documents that I'm going to be using in the first part of this demo. All right, so to get started, I'm going to compose a new email. We're sending this to our Ephesoft Claims email address. And let's go ahead and attach these. And we're going to send that off. So what's happening now is we're actually using an RPA bot to monitor this email address. And when the bot sees that email come in, it's going to take the email and the attachments and then send that to Ephesoft Transact. So if you noticed, that actually went from an unread message to a read message, because what happened is the bot saw that, it basically read that message, downloaded those attachments, and then passed it over to Ephesoft Transact. So now we can log into Ephesoft and take a look. So here we have our batch instance management screen. This is an admin part of the UI, and this is going to show any new jobs that are coming in. So here you can see when I refresh, I do have a new job that just came in, and this is from that email that we sent. So we'll give this a moment to process. It's going to start with the folder import and then work its way down through these different steps. All right, now you can see that it is running, and we've worked our way through some of the first modules here. And now we have ready for validation. So what that means is that this batch of documents has momentarily paused in the validation step. So that human in the loop step that we talked about earlier. So that's going to sit there until the user can come in and take a look. So to do that, we're going to jump over to our batch list. So think of this as our exception queue. We have a batch here, so I can double click this to open this up. And now this is going to show us all of those documents that were included in this particular batch, along with all of the data that we're extracting. So on the left-hand side, you have those different documents. So it will actually include the email body. So here's that email that we sent. Now, if you don't care about the email body, we have a switch. We can turn that off and make sure that we only focus on the attachments. For this case, I did keep it in there. We have our driver's license, all of the pertinent information we extracted. If you're familiar with Ephesoft, then you're aware that whenever you activate a field, you'll see that highlighted area of where that data was grabbed from the image on the right-hand side. So as I kind of jump around here, you can see how that highlighted area changes. Now on the left-hand side, you probably noticed already that we're using this red light, green light system to indicate which documents passed all of our checks and balances, they met all of our validation rules, and which ones were flagged. So it's pretty clear to see that our proof of loss was a flagged document. So when I click on that, that was also the first document that was presented to us when we opened this screen up. Now we're also passing that red light, green light system down to the field level, so pretty obvious to see that our date signed field has been flagged. And if I hover my mouse over this, I see that I have a confidence score issue here. So this basically received a confidence score of 87, which was below that threshold of 90. So really what this is saying is that Ephesoft Transact is really just looking for some human confirmation that the date signed was actually correct. And you can see that it's highlighted here. We do have some tools available on this vertical toolbar. So one that I like to use is this magnification mode. So I can lasso that area and then just blow it up a little bit larger, make it easier to see. So everything does check out and that looks good. So we can just hit validate and that'll clear that flag. Before I continue though, I do want to take a moment just to really look at the other data here because again, this is an entirely handwritten document and we were able to extract everything with ease. So we have our policy number, we've got our claim number, our policy start and end dates, provider, we have the vehicle information, including the VIN, and our motor ID. So the motor ID can also be labeled the driver's license ID. What's really neat about this is that Transact is intuitive enough to just look around that particular area for the appropriate value. So we're not looking in a fixed location. We're really looking for a keyword or some type of anchor. In this case, it was motor ID. And here you can see that whoever filled out this form crossed out one ID and then actually wrote it above it. So Ephesoft was intelligent enough to understand that, look above it and then grab the appropriate motor ID. We've got our license plate. We have our dollar amounts for the claim. And then a really important piece in this process is also to make sure that these documents are signed, especially a sworn statement. So here we are doing a check on the signatures. So we're doing a check on the witness signature, named insured, and then we're also making sure that a notary did sign it. So I'll jump to our accident report as well and show you some of the different data that we pulled here. So some standard header information for the accident report. We have the report number, we've got the date, we have the time, and then we have the NCIC number and the officer ID. On the second tab, we have the vehicle, the first vehicle that was involved in the crash. We have all of that information. So we have the driver's name, we have the driver's license number, we've got their phone number, their address. We even have the vehicle owner in case that was a different person, and then the vehicle information as well. And then second tab is the second vehicle involved. Again, same information for that vehicle number 2. So you can have as many tabs built out on the top here. This is just a nice way to organize data if you do want to keep it separate. All right, so we'll hit validate and that will finish this batch of documents up. And what happens next is that batch of documents will then get pushed into the export step. So now you can see that we're back in the running status and we're actually down here going through our export step. So when I refresh, that's all set. So that's pretty much finished up with that particular set of documents. But what I think is the coolest part of this is that by exporting these documents, that's now triggering the next step in a hyperautomation flow. So as I mentioned, Ephesoft Transact is really a data provider for a hyperautomation scenario. And so now I'm going to show you the end result. So the first thing that it did is it actually triggered a Slack message. So this particular insurance company, they use Slack for communication. So now if I open up Slack, my new claims channel actually has a new message. So I come in here and you can see that my little Slack workbot has created a new message for me. And what's neat is we actually took some of that data that we found and we put it in the Slack message. So things like the policy number, expiration date, and then some dollar amounts. Now, as the person coming into Slack and working on this, I can just click on this hyperlink and that will bring me right in a box. So this is where we're storing all of our claim information. So here you can see that we put it into the appropriate folder for that claim. We have our accident report. We have our proof of loss sworn statement. We also have all the data that we extracted right here in the metadata tab. So you can see on the right hand side, that's all the data that we extracted in Transact. And we also have our driver's license, again with all of the appropriate information. So pretty cool how we can grab that right from a Slack message. And then lastly, we also triggered an email back to the person that sent in those documents. So here you can see that we have a new email that was generated and sent out. So again, really just a confirmation that we received their documents. And then again, we took all of the information, or I should say some of the information that we're finding on those documents and just including it basically as a summary of everything that was provided. All right, so that was the first scenario. Now for our second scenario, we're going to sort of think about things a little bit differently. This will be for a property insurance scenario. And really the idea here is that we're just receiving a lot of new Accord 27 forms. So Accord 27, let me actually show you what those look like. So Accord 27 really just an evidence of property insurance form, pretty standard insurance form. And the idea here is that we have a handful of new Accord 27s that we need to get the information into our coverage database. So that's really the scenario for this second demonstration. So to kick that off, what I'm going to do is just copy this folder into this particular folder here. So this is a monitored location. So again, think of this as being inside the insurance company's data center. Now we're on one of their servers. We have these new Accord 27s that need to be processed, and then that information needs to be entered into the database. So we have our coverage database right here, which right now is empty. So we'll come back to that in a moment. So let's jump back to Ephesoft Transact, and we can refresh this batch instance manager. And now you can see that we do have another new batch that's coming in, so in the running status. So now this batch was triggered by dropping that folder into that monitored location on my server. All right, so again, now this batch is also ready for validation. So let's go ahead and take a look at this set of documents. So here you can see that we did find 5 different Accord forms. This first one happened to have a second page. So we have an addendum on this Accord 27. But you can see how those came in, it separated them, and then we have all the information that we're finding. So all of your common fields here, we've got our agency name and addresses, the insured, we have policy information, dates, even remarks. Now we're still using that same system to identify valid documents, everything with a green bar, versus something like the second one that does have another confidence issue. And so here again, we can just validate this, make sure that it looks good, and then continue on. So that was the only exception in this batch, but let's just step through these other ones just so you can see. So Accord 27 is fairly structured, pretty much the same. But again, something like the remarks, that's going to be completely different on all of these documents. And then something like the coverage information right here, we can also extract that via our table extraction methods. You can see all that information right there. All right, so let's go ahead and finish this validation. So we'll jump back to our batch instance manager. And that batch actually finished already, so that's how quick that was. So let's jump back onto our server now, and let's make this a little bit larger. So here's that coverage database. So now if I refresh, you can see that now I have all of this data that was extracted from Ephesoft Transact. So we have our date, we have our agency customer ID, our agency name and address, our insured name and address, we have our policy numbers, our dates, our property descriptions, company, remarks, etc. We also have our batch identifier, so this is a unique value, and then also the document ID. So it's very easy to sort of filter and make these unique identifiers and locators as needed. So just by dropping, those Accord 27s into a folder, Ephesoft Transact did all of the heavy lifting, extracted all of that information. We just, basically verified that one field, took a look at a few other ones, push it through, and now we have all that information easily accessible in this database. Thanks for watching today. If you have any other questions, please get in touch with us and we'd be happy to arrange a call. Have a great day.